in most cases, if you find out what a serial killer's type is, you can take steps to make sure you don't fit the bill. You can dye or cut your hair, change your clothes, or change certain habits that might make you appealing to a killer in your area. What if the thing that would make you appealing to the killer was something as out of control as your name? Today we'll be looking into the Alphabet Killer and the unsolved child murders that occurred in Rochester, New York in the early 70s, and trying to narrow down who the culprit might be, or if it was even the work of a serial killer at all. November 16, 1971, 10-year-old Carmen Colon was out by herself doing chores for her grandparents. She went into a pharmacy to pick up her grandmother's prescription, but was told that the prescription had not been processed. While waiting for the prescription, Carmen became noticeably anxious and stressed before telling the pharmacist and store owner Jack Corbin, I gotta go. It was then that she left the store and was seen getting into a car that had been parked nearby outside, with witnesses at the time presuming it was a family member. By around 5:10 p.m., give or take 50 minutes after she had been seen leaving the pharmacy, Carmen was seen naked from the waist down on the side of Interstate 490, desperately flailing her arms to try and get help from any one of the roughly 38 drivers who saw her. While this was going on, a dark Ford Pinto was reversing to try to run her down before a man got out of the car, and according to eyewitness testimonies, forced Carmen to be submissively led back to the car. Of the 38 people that saw Carmen on the interstate, not a single soul stopped to try and help this clearly distressed, half-naked 11-year-old child. In fact, these people were apparently so nonplussed by this harrowing situation that the first report on the incident to the police wouldn't come until 3 days later. Carmen would be reported missing to the police just before 8 p.m. by her mother, and a mere 2 days later, the horrible truth would be discovered. On November 18th, 2 teenage boys discovered the body of Carmen Colon thrown haphazardly in a gully about 12 miles from the interstate she had last been seen on, close to a nearby village. Her coat and pants were discovered later, with her coat being around 300 feet from where her body was found, and her pants being much closer to the interstate. During her autopsy, it was revealed she had been raped, had her skull and one of her vertebrae fractured, had been extensively scratched by human fingernails, and had been strangled to death by someone using their hands. Public outrage was stirred up by the tragedy that befell Carmen, and several rewards were put out for information leading to the arrest and conviction of her killer, totaling above $6,000, as well as several full-size billboards asking the public for any information they might have. The police soon got a lead when they found out that Carmen's uncle, Miguel Colon, was a man that she had grown very close to following her parents' divorce, had the same kind of car that was seen abducting Carmen. Not only this, but upon inspection by the police, it became evident that the car had recently been thoroughly deep cleaned with intense chemical cleaners, especially the trunk of the car. Given that the car had been a recent purchase by Miguel, the police decided to ask the dealer if they had done the cleaning before selling it, but the dealership informed them that they had not. Creepiest of all, the police found a doll of Carmen in Miguel's car, and when asked about it, Miguel said that the doll wasn't creepy or weird because they were family, but the police were still incredibly wary. Miguel was later heard telling friends that he had done something wrong in Rochester, and soon after fled to Puerto Rico. On April 2, 1973, over a year after the death of Carmen Colon, 11-year-old Wanda Walkowicz was walking home from the grocery store around 5:30 p.m. She was seen stopping and leaning against a fence to keep from dropping her groceries before talking to the driver of a large brown car, and soon after being forced into the car. Eerily similar to Carmen, Wanda's mother reported her missing to the police by 8 p.m. At 10:15 the next day, Wanda's body was found at the base of a hill, with police suspecting her body had been thrown out of a moving car, leaving her body to roll down the hill. After the autopsy, it was determined that she too had been raped and strangled. However, this time, there were ligature marks which seemed to imply she was strangled with a belt versus someone's hands. During the autopsy, officials were able to collect samples of semen and pubic hair from the killer, as well as copious amounts of white cat hair, despite the Walkowicz not owning a white cat. Wanda's autopsy also revealed that she had custard in her stomach, and her family insisted she wouldn't have eaten that of her own accord, nor would she really have had access to it by herself. Once again, there was a reward put out for any useful information pertaining to the case, this time with a reward of $10,000. However, no successful leads were found. With nothing stopping him, the killer struck again 7 months later on November 26, 1973. At around 3:20 p.m., 11-year-old Michelle Mainza was walking home alone from school when she decided to swing by a department store to pick up a purse her mother had accidentally left there. By 3:30 p.m., a witness spotted Michelle sitting in the passenger seat of a beige car traveling noticeably fast down the road, apparently crying. At 4:30 p.m., Michelle was spotted eating at a fast food restaurant with a Caucasian man with dark hair between 25 and 35 years old, around 6 feet tall, and weighing roughly 165 pounds. An hour later, a motorist spotted a beige car along the side of the road that was broken down with a flat tire. Standing outside was a man matching the description of the one seen at the fast food restaurant, as well as a young girl matching Michelle's description who appeared to be incredibly upset. The motorist tried to approach to see if they needed any help with the car, as well as to check on the girl. When they got near, the man apparently grabbed the girl and pushed her behind his back, while also attempting to block the license plate of the car. However, the motorist was able to get a partial plate that they later gave to police. The motorist later stated that the man had such a menacing and intimidating look on his face that they felt they had to leave and drove off. 2 days later, on November 28th, Michelle's body was found in a ditch about 15 miles outside of Rochester, with signs showing that she had also been raped and strangled to death with some kind of rope. Once again, there was a large amount of white cat hair covering her body, and this time police were able to recover some foliage samples clutched in her hands that matched nearby foliage, indicating to the police that she had most likely been strangled to death in the same spot her body was found. During the autopsy, they investigated Michelle's stomach and found traces of hamburger, which backed up the eyewitness claim about her eating fast food before her death. As with the murders before her, there were no solid leads to definitively lead the investigators to her killer. As you may have noticed, all three of the victims had first and last names that began with the same letter: Carmen Colon, Wanda Wolkowitz, and Michelle Mainza. Not only this, but each girl's body was driven several miles away from Rochester to be dumped in a place that somehow correlated to each girl's name. Carmen was found near the village of Churchville, Wanda was found at the bottom of a hill in Webster, and Michelle was found in a ditch in Macedon. All this information led to the media giving the perpetrator the name the Alphabet Killer, or referring to the crimes as double initial murders. Despite the correlation between all of the girls' names, most experts believe that the double initials of each victim were merely a crazy coincidence, stating that the intense intelligence and organization needed to pull off crimes like that did not fit with the other behaviors the killer exhibited, such as the crude way he got rid of the bodies. One man in particular, named Robert Ressler, renowned for his extensive work with serial killers and for actually coining the term serial killer himself, stated that he didn't even think all three murders were done by the same person. While there are undeniable similarities between Wanda and Michelle's murder that made it seem like they shared a killer, Ressler stated that he thought Carmen's murder showed much more anger and aggression, not to mention that Carmen was not fed fast food before her murder, nor was she covered in cat hair like the other two. Another weird difference that separated Carmen from the rest of the girls was that she was found partially naked, while the other two girls were redressed after their deaths, so they were found fully clothed. Taking all of this into account, the police were now facing the prospect of finding not just one killer, but possibly two. As mentioned before, Miguel Colon was the #1 suspect in the case of Carmen's death, but he fled to Puerto Rico in order to avoid questioning. The police discovered this and made the trek down to Puerto Rico to investigate him before eventually extraditing him back to New York, where he wasn't able to provide any solid alibi. However, there was also no physical evidence that the police had to tie him to the crime. With Miguel falling through as a suspect, the investigators turned to Dennis Termini as their #1 suspect, a man known as the Garage Rapist, who was active during the same time of the murders and who had attempted to abduct 2 other girls before eventually taking his own life to avoid police custody when one attempted abduction didn't go as planned. However, when his car was searched after his death, it should be noted that it contained large amounts of white cat hair. They then suspected Kenneth Bianchi, who lived in Rochester at the time of the murders, and who would eventually move to California and become the serial killer known as the Hillside Strangler, sharing a similar MO with the Alphabet Killer. Lastly, the police suspected Joseph Nasso, who was a killer that split his time between California and Rochester, and was known specifically for attacking women with matching initials. However, his targets were generally older prostitutes. None of the suspects had large amounts of physical evidence to tie them to the murders, and the DNA evidence recovered from Wanda matched none of the men. With no solid leads and little chance of new evidence popping up, it's very unlikely that we'll ever know the true identity of the killer or killers, but investigators are still working every day to try and solve the crimes and honor the memories of the 3 girls who lost their lives. Let us know your thoughts about the case down in the comment section, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it, and we'll see you in the next one.